In the years since the concept of legacy took root at the meeting of World War I veterans in Hobart, there have been many stories to tell, but the story that perhaps matters the most, and the one that its members hold as the most important, is the story of the legacy children. Behind this story are the ideals of John Gellibrand, born at Ouse in 1872, who became a permanent soldier and rose to become one of Australia's most senior and highly decorated commanders during World War I. He was the man who inspired his fellow veterans with a romantic but serious vision of continuing the spirit of service and comradeship, which he found at Gallipoli and on the fields of France. Their job, as he saw it, would be to support their former comrades in re-establishing themselves in business and to help the families of the permanently incapacitated and indeed those who did not return. Although records of Remembrance Club activities are sketchy, gymnasium training for children of ex-servicemen was one of many beyond direct family assistance. This eventually led to the formation of Boys' Club activities in 1937. A pattern was established. The following year, a girls' club was formed with spectacular success, attracting more than 100 girls who were provided with uniforms by the Remembrance Ladies Guild, a group of women who were inspired to pitch in and support the members of Remembrance Club. World War II gave Hobart Legacy a new task, and in 1945 the club purchased the building in Macquarie Street, which has since become known as Legacy House. But no sooner had Friday night's children's activities begun at the new home than it became apparent that the family had already outgrown it. In the general community, legacy children were accorded a special place. During the visit of the newly crowned Queen Elizabeth and the Duke of Edinburgh in 1954, legacy children were given VIP allocation at a cenotaph ceremony which included the planting of the Poplar Avenue. And long rehearsals and the building of skills at Legacy House were rewarded under the spotlight of public performances such as at the Town Hall public concerts. Plans were put in place for the biggest fundraising effort in the club's history, to tear down a cottage at the rear of Legacy House and build a new hall which was opened in 1954. The appeal became a model for what was to become an annual certificate of adoption appeal, the mainstay of public support for legacy until the 1980s. In the meantime, the tradition of school holiday camps for children have begun in earnest, and groups of children, usually boys or girls only, would be taken by bus to locations such as Port Arthur, where boys were billeted in Smith O'Brien's cottage, at Orford, the quarantine station on Bruny Island, Fort Direction, Taroona, and Austin's Ferry. The value of the camps was seen as threefold. Firstly, it gave children a new opportunity for self-development among their peer group. It gave legatees a great opportunity to get to know and understand their needs, and it gave their mothers a brief relief from the task of the single parent. During these years, many of the older children, wishing to maximise their time with Legacy, were eager to take up the opportunity of joining a teenage group and extended their activities into weekend trips and social visits. Meanwhile, Friday night activities at Legacy House paralleled the popularity of camps, with attendance of up to 100 children each week. Classes were held in 50-minute shifts, from 5:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And the variety of challenges was only limited by the interests of the children, the skills of legatees, and the availability of volunteer instructors. Perennial activities included leatherwork, felt work, dressmaking, woodwork and gym activities as seen on this film taken in the 1960s, as well as confidence building skills such as judo and art of speech. Individual legatees coaching students, namely maths and English, etc. In 1961, major improvements were made to the hall. In 1961, major improvements were made to the hall, including a lounge for the use of widows and a gymnasium on the top floor, a popular venue for letting off a bit of steam and taking on a bit more self-confidence. In some cases, it was a binding of the family circle, mothers involved in fellowship with other widows in the lounge, while their children learnt skills and enjoyed games under the supervision of their legatee, the family advisor. Today, the gym only reverberates to the faintest echoes of those years. Widows who use it for table tennis, the occasional revisit by those who have a story to tell for the new generation of legacy children, and by a social group for aerobic classes. Advancing through its 75th year, with a small but important legacy of children whose fathers served in Vietnam and other post-World War II conflicts, Hobart Legacy continues to maintain its priority of providing opportunity for children of deceased ex-servicemen. Each year, young teenagers are sponsored for a nationwide summer camp run by Legacy in Western Australia at Brusselston. 2 Tasmanian children are also selected each year to visit Canberra for the Anzac Day service, with an emphasis on touring the national capital and taking part in a VIP tour of the Australian War Memorial. And from 1957, all camps were held at this location. The following film and commentary from about 1961 provides an insight into the important place this became in the times and place of children with the legatees.
Camping has always been part of the Hobart Legacy pattern of life. To live with a person is undoubtedly the only way to get to know them. And the knowledge gained of the children at these camps is of untold value in helping to mould their future lives. In the past, the camps were held at various places. Some at Port Arthur, some at Orford, and even down at the quarantine station at Bruny Island. We've also had the use of the Army camp at Fort Direction. However, the need was ever present to establish a permanent camp of our own. And it was with this object in view that a reconnaissance was made of a number of sites, including one at Conyngham. Conyngham came out of a list of suggested sites by Legatee Harcourt, who was aware of its potential and, what was more, had knowledge of the ways and means whereby it could be obtained. Permission was given to hold a camp at Conyngham to test its suitability, and this proved most popular and satisfactory. those closely concerned with the camp, then made a recommendation that arrangements should be made to acquire an area of ground sufficient to contain a reasonable camp area and the adjoining beach. The proposed site, which is situated on the northwest portion of an area of land of approximately 40 acres, is bounded on one side by a sandy beach about 1/4 of a mile in length, with a shallow seaside which is ideal for safe swimming and boating, and providing glorious views over the channel to Tinderbox and Bruny Island. The arrangements took some time, and in the meantime our camps continued on the land near the present hut site. We have always felt that a genuine camp should be held under canvas. And this has been confirmed by the children, who regard living in a tent as one of the most enjoyable aspects of their holiday. And it's with gratitude that we acknowledge the generous assistance of the Army in providing tents, palliasses, blankets, cooking stoves and various other utensils. Whilst the smaller tents still prove to be admirable for sleeping quarters, with the growth of the numbers attending, the large marquees required for messing purposes did present many difficulties. And on one occasion, one of these was lost in a gale during the night. Whilst the legatees on duty were still frantically trying to secure the ropes and flapping canvas, breakfast was served under the shelter of a large tree. And so the decision was made to establish a permanent mess hall. Following the completion of a lease, a committee was formed to supervise its erection, together with various other work projects, including the road in, which probably presented the greatest of the many hazards encountered. One party spent a back-breaking weekend putting in a culvert at one of the vulnerable spots on the track. But the work went on, and finally the mess hall became a fact. And at the Christmas camp of 1958, we really had our meals in style. A style that fitted the quality of the food served up, a quality that's always been contributed to by the generosity of the local farmers in donating quantities of all kinds of farm produce. With the advent of the camp hall, there came more problems. We required tables, seats, and above all, electric light. However, it was not long before one of our light-headed legatees came to light with the news of an electric generator most suitable for our purpose. Negotiations took place, and the purchase of the generating set was completed at a most reasonable figure, made even more reasonable by a kind supporter of Legacy who donated a cheque to cover the cost. A feature of the installation is the supply of 240 volts to the mess hall and kitchens, and a breakdown to a 32-volt supply to the tents, thus eliminating the possibility of inquisitive small boys becoming electrocuted. The switch-on ceremony took place at the Easter camp last year and was duly celebrated by a film show that night. Then, during our Christmas camp, after a series of clean-up operations, it was realized that we could not function successfully without some reasonable means of washing the unwashed. These clean-up operations had been carried out by senior members of the camp in the tents and on the persons of the small boys after they'd been successfully trapped and deprived of their clothes. So a shower house was planned and built, and to it was added the greatest wonder of Conyngham Camp, a camp geyser, which animal was engineered by an ex-naval type who must undoubtedly have served a period of forced contemplation of that spouting wonder at Rotorua. Hot showers became the pattern of the day, and one old gentleman is known to have spent at least 240 winks in the shower bay after taps. New additions now being completed that will add further comfort to the next camp include a first aid and administrative hut. Our camps have grown from the earlier times when 20 and 30 seemed a formidable number. We reached the record figure of 100 at the Christmas camp of 1959. It is the aim of all our camps that none is refused attendance. And a unique feature is that we cater for mixed groups of boys and girls, ranging in age from 4 years to, well, perhaps it will suffice to say, over 20 years. As who can really say when one ceases to be a child? As you watch this film, I'm sure you'll readily agree that it is difficult to distinguish the old from the young. And now, with the striking of the tents, the camp is over. And we are close to the end of our little story of the establishment of Conyngham. And those of us who've taken part in these happy events look forward to hearing once again that medley of sounds as the tent lines come to life and the early morning sun brings out the full beauty of Conyngham.
The golden days of Conyngham continued for a generation, and the camps continued with hardly a hiccup through trials and tribulation. Most dramatically, the bushfires of 1967, which swept the campsite and meant a new beginning from scratch. It was not until 1976, with most of the wartime and baby boom children now leading independent lives, that it was finally decided the site would be better used by others, and the camp was reluctantly handed over to the Education Department. However, the children remaining were not disadvantaged, and for as long as sufficient numbers remained, holiday groups were taken to various locations around the state. But the legacy link with the Conyngham camp remains, and the club continues to sponsor an annual camp for widows at the site. Finally, a lease was taken on Crown land at Conyngham. While these films and photos show an important aspect of Legacy's work over the decades, they do not tell the most important part of the story: the availability around the clock of members to provide service and organise any assistance that may be required for the families of those who served our nation in war. This is a job that members of Legacy must handle to the best of their ability, in the time they can make available, with their own families and responsibilities in mind. It is not an obligation of war service. It is a remembrance of Gellibrand's ideal to continue that spirit of comradeship and service, forged in the spirit of sacrifice for the nation in war. Hobart Legacy has pledged to continue that task for as long as there is a beneficiary who will gain by that help.